obscure world of parking. We use it every day, but have we really capitalized on the intricacies of our industry? In this podcast, the Parking Network will go behind the scenes and talk to industry professionals about all things parking, from the horizon of evolving technology and even stories of the old days. We hope to encourage and inspire operators and property managers alike to look at parking through a new lens. All right, welcome to the Our Parking Industry podcast. We are so glad you're here today. Today, we're going to be discussing e-commerce. It can be a somewhat polarizing conversation, but we hope to provide knowledge and resources on both the positives and the negatives, the upsides and the downsides, the challenges and the benefits of e-commerce. We hope you will follow along. I'm Krista Oline. This is Trina Tudor and Clyde Wilson, and we'll be following a question and answer format. And we hope you'll listen. Take it away, Trina.
So the first thing I wanted to talk about is, are there any standards when it comes to e-commerce operating in our garages?
At this point, of course, we're in that very transformational period with e-commerce and its movement into the parking industry. And there have not been anyone, at least that I've seen, attempt to begin the process of writing standards. So no, the answer to that is no, there are no standards. We have, as you and I, in our position as financial reviewing of the parking industry, we look and we see something different across the board on each one of the different groups that are providing e-commerce.
And we kind of see that throughout everything in parking, like from East Coast to West Coast. We mainly focus on the US, but in equipment vendors and billing systems, there are no true written standards that everyone follows. And the same is true for e-commerce. And we know that e-commerce is relatively new, kind of one of the newer things we've seen come along. But it's going to stick around and it's going to stay. So what can we do to help with that lack of standards, or what has helped with the lack of standards with equipment and other things historically?
Well, traditionally, the parking industry has not been one that really worked together. It's been a large group of true competitors. So there has not been anyone really circling around providing standards on the different equipment providers into our industry, and also the different policies and procedures. I can remember back to when we first started doing audits, and after a fairly quick period of time, it became very obvious to me that the reason we were finding so much was simply because policies and procedures and standard ways of doing things did not exist. So what happened was, as Trina was managing the parking garage at 4th and Main, and then she's promoted to the garage at 5th and Market, and I come in behind her, I just kind of pick up the best I can over what she taught me or left behind. And some of it I remember and some of it I don't. So you know what I do? I start making up my own. And as I make up my own, I move on to another job somewhere, and Krista comes in behind me. And there's no standard way of doing things. It's kind of handed down by word of mouth. And so it became pretty obvious to me back in 1998 or so that probably the real reason that we found so much when we were doing audits was that everything was kind of handed down and changed. And it's the old game of, you sit in a classroom and student one tells a quick story to student two, and it gets passed around the room. And by the time it comes out the other side, it's a totally different story. It's not recognizable at all. Well, the same thing has happened to our entire business. We have allowed this to happen, and it's time, I think, especially going into this new age that we're going into, standardization is going to be terribly, terribly important in getting this right. Because right now, as far as e-commerce goes, we're a long way from right.
So we talked about the lack of standardization and how one company will do something one way and another company next door will do something a little bit different. Are there benefits to that?
I think you might look at it as it's a competitive benefit between the different companies, but we in the parking industry is, as much as it is about parking cars, it's also an equal part of accountability. And I don't think you can have true accountability without some form of standardization in the way some of this works, this passing around of financial transactions. So we should always respect the desire from one company to be competitive in the new things that they do with the others, but at the same time, we have to be accountable and we have to hold standards to be accountable. And we as an industry have not done that very well.
And we have a unique perspective because we, like each facility and each company, are kind of in their own little bubble doing their own thing. And with our position, we get to see inside of each of those bubbles. So our perspective might be a little bit different in that regard, because we see what Garage A is doing compared to Garage B, who's operated or managed or owned by somebody different. So that's kind of been interesting to see the evolution of several of those things. Another question I have is, we, not just parking, but all industries are seeing this increase in e-commerce. So what exactly qualifies as a modality of e-commerce? Like what is an e-commerce transaction?
Well, there are several different, the evolution has already started. So there are several different types of e-commerce transactions, but at least in our mind, the e- the definition of an e-commerce transaction is a transaction that happens away from the island and the control equipment. Even for a pay on foot station, that control equipment, that isolated group of equipment, that's a standard transaction. When you move away from that and the payment process for any reason moves off of that site, then it's an e-commerce transaction. As far as, I mean, that's the best example I think I can give of it, at least at this point.
So when we think about it, we think about maybe driving into downtown to go to an event or to a concert or something. But you're saying that an e-commerce transaction could even be a QR code positioned on the entry equipment or the exit equipment at the facility?
Yes, because the transaction isn't happening on the site, isn't a hardwired transaction. Even a QR code. You have to look at who owns the QR code. Where does that money go? I don't know. The QR code is a separate transaction from identifying a car that enters the site and then identifying it again, should I say car person, and identifying them again as the one that's paying or has paid and leaves. So it's a different view of payment processes in our industry.
What are the benefits and difficulties we've seen for our customers when it comes to e-commerce? I know you have a story about that. I don't know if we want to get into that right now, but just in general, the benefits and difficulties for our customers. That's something we want to keep at the forefront. What are those?
Well, I think just the basic benefits that fits into a video cast like this. Um, the parking ticket has been around for about 80 years. It wasn't created for parking. The parking ticket actually, to at least the best I've been able to research and find, it was actually created for the bus and train business, like in New York, where if you were going to go on a train 80 years ago, you went into the train station, you went up to a little machine, stuff a couple of quarters in, and you got one of the little tickets like we see at the amusement parks. And that was your ticket to get on a train. So guess what? For 80 years, everybody, without exception, that was going into a parking facility received a paper ticket. It either you pushed the button and it came out of the ticket spitter, or you reached out your hand and an attendant there handed you one. Since I started in this business in 1979, it was funny, but we had people that couldn't figure out how to get a ticket out of a machine. And we had people that was one of the common things, and this only happened at hospitals, because in hospitals you have people from around the country that have never really parked downtown come into a hospital, we used to have to go in every morning and dig dollar bills out of the ticket spitter because people would stuff dollar bills in the ticket spitter. So I'm not a real big lover of standardization in some things, but when you're dealing with a wide range of the public, standardization is very, very important. Very important. So I yesterday had jury duty. So yesterday, a whole large number of us, hundreds of us, managed to be on the upper end of that list. So we were all let go at the same time. So we're all walking out together, and it was I won't say the name of the equipment, but it was a a QR code ticket that had a QR code on the front, and your validation sticker went on the back, and it was a QR code. So I'm in line of about 30 people that are trying to figure out what the heck do I do with this. So I took it for as long as I could, and then had to step up and say, "Let me help you." So I ended up there for a long time helping people try to do their parking and get out. So standardization is going to be very, very important, and we're moving into this new era of you drive into a parking garage and there's not much but a bunch of QR codes pasted all over the wall or nothing, and you maybe bought your ticket online, and so you kind of have it on your cell phone. And what do I do? There's the numbers in our business, for the most part, are pretty similar. About 70% of the cars in the garage are monthly parkers. We don't have to worry about them. They park there every day. They know the rules. If we want to change the rules, it's easy to communicate with them, and we can do it. Another fairly large number of the cars that park there every day are all-day parkers who are working temporarily in the building. They're not going to buy monthly parking. They don't come in early enough to qualify as an early bird, but they're parked there every day. So after their first day, they struggle, but after that, they got it. Early bird parkers park there almost every day. They know the rules. It's that other group of true transients that have never been there. And we're not doing a good job of communicating to them or the first time user. As you start going through this transformational period in our industry, something we almost never had to think about before. When you drove up, hit a button, and a ticket came out, you never really had to think about the first time user. Now, all of a sudden, the first time user has become this very important person that we have to learn to deal with. And I think we're still a long way from doing that. So a part of that standardization process that you talked about earlier is how do we deal with the first time user and help them move through the system. Instead of pulling up into a parking garage and knowing I think I'm supposed to do something, I just don't know what it is. And 5 people have pulled in behind me and started blowing their horns, and now I'm in trouble. So we do have to think very heavily about how are we going to deal with the first time user.
Not every line of cars will have a Clyde Wilson in the back. They can come up and help them.
That's right. I mean, I'm doing the best I can, guys, but
yeah.
I can't be everywhere.
Jury duty turned parking duty. I like it. So when we think about the customer service piece, that is a direct connection to the operator or the parking manager that's on site. They are the ones that are the front line of that customer service piece. But how does the customer service aspect or just the e-commerce piece in general affect the property managers or the property owners?
Well, the property managers and property owners day-to-day worry about parking should be 2 things, and that's accountability. Are the people managing my garage doing it in such a way that all of the money that the customer is paying into some system is getting back to us? And the other one is just the plain old everyday customer service issues. Are you running this system in a way that the customer service to my customers in the garage is working for them? And, you guys have had to listen over and over again to my stories when I become one of those parkers. and the total lack of customer service that I've had to deal with in my attempts to become a customer. So there's a long way to go, and that's what the owners should be worried about. What kind of program are you doing to make darn sure you have good customer service, and our customers, as they go through this transformational change and how they get it out of my garage, what are you doing to make sure they know how to do this, and that there's a method to help them if there's a problem. And then how are you making sure all the money's getting to me? Back to the tickets on the cars and the money in the bank.
Rules to live by.
Rules to live by.
The idea of the first time parker. So we here at the Parking Network intimately know how you kind of tackled that. So can you explain your overall thinking of the importance of the first time parker and different ways to kind of solve that problem or overcome that hurdle?
Well, the first time parker is, boy, that's a hard question to answer in 3 hours. The the first time parker, number one, you have to think about it. That the first time parker is somebody you've got to figure out, how am I going to help them do this without me having to stand there and do it for them. And so you have to think through the process very much, and you have to have a process that works very well. And for us, I think you're asking the question going back to flow through technologies and how we dealt with that, because that was the biggest challenge. Once we kind of figured out this flow through and how it works, the biggest challenge was to make sure that the first time customer could do this. We chose at the time, and I still have the video that proves that it worked exceptionally well. And I think parking people are a little reluctant to some degree because we did it over the years and we never did a very good job of this. But we used audio. We used an audio that as soon as the car was detected, this audio started that was very short, sweet, and to the point, that told the customer exactly what to do. And I have the video of watching the customers that had never used our system before drive up. They could hear it talking, and it told them what to do, and you could see them turn and go right to it and do it. And the one video I have is a line of everybody in that line is a first-time user, and they all did it really well. So thinking through the fact that whatever challenge we're putting out there, the first-time customer is there, they're coming, and we don't want them holding up the people that have figured the system out. So it's usually a pretty simple process, but it is communication. We live in this great time now to where this is the communications world. We can communicate so much more easily than we could in the past. So we need to take advantage of communication. And I really happen to like the voice audio communication that we used at the entry lane.
Yeah. I heard a quote recently that I think applies to this, and it was, take a simple idea and take it seriously. And so the simple idea
Oh
of
boy.
how do you overcome the challenge of the first time parker, and take that seriously and really try to find a solution that works. Maybe it's location by location due to the uniqueness of each each facility, but maybe it's something universal that you can implement across the board. But take it seriously, because those are the people, the first time parkers, that are going to disrupt the monthly parkers and possibly upset a tenant, or it could lead to lots of other things. It has a trickle down effect. But the first time
That
parker and the customer service is so important.
That is a great statement. Take something that looks simple and take it seriously. So again, I'll go back to my jury duty yesterday. Driving into the garage, I'm in line with a bunch of people that do not park in a parking garage every day. Well, things have changed. It used to be a button so big sitting over there that said press here. Well, now it's funny how those simple things can just get you. Now, I won't tell the name of the brand of the equipment, but you guys will know what I'm talking about. Now, the press button was up here on a screen, and it was in the screen. It wasn't a button anymore. All right. The other problem with it was up at a place that was exactly where the window of my car, the top of my car, blocked some of the word. So they had to have a person standing in every entry lane helping people get in the garage. It is 2024. We've been doing this for a while now. And because of a change, a large number of people didn't know what that blue button wasn't there. It's gone. What do I do with this? And that it also blocked. There was probably some people, especially sitting in a lower car. I'm sitting in a little higher car. People sitting in a lower car probably really had their view blocked. The other part of that, to move over to where I park at the airport, they put in new equipment. They put the credit card reader in. The credit card reader is not there. It's behind me. So when I look out the window, it's behind me. And at night, it's also dark. And the card reader is black. You can't see the slots. So it takes forever to get your credit card in right. So I've just learned I have a flashlight laying in my dashboard now when I go to the airport, and I take my flashlight and credit card out to find the slots. So that what you just said applies more from e-commerce to everything in our business, because we're asking customers to do something that some of them have never done before. And so take something that appears real simple, sticking my credit card in a credit card reader, and take it very seriously of how do we solve all the problems. And I can assure you, nobody in the parking business sat there and looked at this design and said, okay, people at night, they'll see it, but you can't.
I actually had a similar experience with the button issue, and the confusing part about it was that there was a button on the machine. There was a lot going on for one, but there was a button on the machine, but it wasn't for getting your ticket. The get your ticket button was on a digital screen that was embedded in the equipment. So yes, sometimes even for people that work in the industry, it can be confusing.
And we were going to a parking convention, and that was a conversation had in the convention room, was
Yes.
who had trouble finding the button, and it's like, oh, we did.
Yep. Guilty.
Yep.
Yeah,
So
so we are in an industry, and I think this may be changing somewhat now, but the majority of the equipment that has been put into our industry, except for the one that the parking network designed, the majority of the equipment that's come into our industry has come in from people who don't manage parking. They put the equipment in and leave. They always did. 40 years for me, they put equipment in and walked out the door. They don't don't apparently think it's necessary to stand there for a while and watch customers use their equipment and see if there are some problems. So they may want to make some darn changes to it.
and that's a historical fact, is that the equipment was made generally, not site specifically. And the same is true for the e-commerce things. Those are companies making a general procedure, making a general product. And when you take that and apply it to all these, and I've said this before, but all these different facilities that are very unique, all these different challenges are going to pop up and arise. And so whose responsibility is it to tackle those challenges? Is it the e-commerce company that's making the general product that's not in each garage, or is it the operator's responsibility to go back to them and report these problems until they're resolved and they have to do a software change just for this location? Like, what is the solution to that?
Um, this has been something I think I have talked about for at least 38 of my 42 or 3 years in the parking business. And I've kind of stuck with the same story. The answer to that question is the parking operators deal with the customer interaction with the equipment every day. But the parking operators never, as a group, individually or as a group, went back to the equipment providers and said, we don't like this crap. It's not working for us. And here are some changes that we see need to happen so that our customers can do that. We never did it. We absolutely never did that. And that was in my just prior to coming into the parking business. I worked for Sears. That unfortunately I'm watching them fall apart now, and it's hard to watch. But I worked for Sears, and Sears, for what most people I don't think realized, Sears in the early days was known for their Kenmore appliances, Kenmore refrigerators, stoves, and they had lifetime warranties on them. I'm not sure that, I don't remember that they had lifetime warranties, but they had a very long warranty. But the Kenmore product was actually I think it was a Westinghouse. I may not have this right now. It's been too many years. A Westinghouse product that Sears went to and said, this is the way we want you to design this. We're going to put this big warranty on this, so we want it right. So the Kenmore product was really another very popular company's product designed by Sears and the people who were going to end up paying the price if the warranty turned out to be a bad deal. So we as a parking industry never did that. And it was one of the reasons why in 2013, I decided to go out there and build my own at the time to try to get it right. And we put a lot of time in working to get it right. So the answer to that to me is the parking industry, the parking operators never did the one thing they should have done, and that was to band together and go back to the first question you asked about standardization. They never did that. If they'd have done that, it would have been a better experience going forward for everybody.
And it's kind of hard to change or know that something needs to be changed when there's not any feedback. So kind of what you're saying is that the operators need to be providing that feedback to these e-commerce companies saying, hey, this isn't working for us and here's why. Can you help us change that? And they need to be working together to make a change, to make it successful and make it beneficial for both the operator, or for not just both, but the operator, the property manager, the customer, and for their own company, the e-commerce company.
That's a great statement, and I think I know the answer to that. I'm not going to go into it now because it would be hours of discussion, but that's a very important part of what we're getting into. We're about to change the way. Imagine what yesterday would have been like for me coming out of jury duty with about 250 people in line trying to get their car paid for if it had been one step even more different than something that they realized. It would have been really, really difficult.
I think a unique piece of the story you told about Sears and Kenmore was that if we're looking at a Kenmore dishwasher, it has one job: wash the dishes. If we're looking at
Right,
a parking facility, it has one job: get the cars in and out of the garage efficiently, right? So
right.
it it sounds simple on the surface, but then it comes down to the details, like is the water hard or soft where the dishwasher is washing the dishes, or what kind of detergent are they using in the dishwasher? And those same different little anomalies about each facility make it a challenge for the equipment or the e-commerce vendor. But what I guess one piece that I was thinking is that what might be right for one location might be totally wrong for another location. So is it possible to win? Is it possible to win as an e-commerce provider?
We're pretty new into this. I have become a firm believer in that. Yes, it is. It is possible to win as an e-commerce provider, but we have to stop. We actually went through this again back in the audit days, 20 something years ago. The solution to this, and it goes back to what I was talking about earlier, where every company may have handed down rules from Trina to me and me to you and they kind of got mixed up as they went down the road. The same thing here. When you create standards, yeah, there are differences from site to site, but you start moving everybody toward that standard. So while what you just said, the standards maybe, I can't get it on the screen here, the standards may be this far apart. Um, it, but as you manage the standards, you might be able to get them down to here. And if you can get them down to here, then you have a much better facility. So I'm a firm believer that everything you said was correct. Every facility is different. There are all kinds of things that can happen. I mean, every facility is different in the course of a day.
Yeah.
During the morning times, you're dealing with early birds and monthlies and a few visitors that are coming in to go to office meetings. And then at 11:30, people are coming in possibly to go meet a friend for lunch. So their needs are different. And then that night, there's an event at the symphony and people are parking in the garage. So you can meet 4 or 5 different standard issues with e-commerce in the course of one day in one facility. So it changes. So the first question you ask may turn out to have been the most important question, and it's standardization of this and trying to get the standards down to something that are much smaller than when they're very wide apart.
And it's a challenge. I love the idea that Trina presented about communication. It has to be two-way communication, not just a one-way communication. So everybody has to be ready to listen because they want to be better, but everybody also has to be ready to provide supportive feedback and provide some challenges that they're facing and provide those with confidence. Like, what is happening in my garage? What ideas do I have being boots on the ground that can make it better, and offer those up. Don't be afraid to present those in a constructive way. It's whenever we get deconstructive that maybe it doesn't work out in our favor. So
Right.
like I said at the beginning, we know that the e-commerce stuff is new and it can be quite polarizing. Some people think it's the greatest thing. Some people think it's maybe not. Maybe it makes our industry more difficult to manage. But we've also mentioned that it's not going anywhere. E-commerce is present in other industries outside of parking, but it's really becoming prevalent in our parking industry. So we want to make sure that we are continuing to look into this. So we'll probably have many other episodes about e-commerce, and we hope you'll come along. We're going to interview some experts in the field. We'll interview some people that deal with it every day, some inventors or producers of e-commerce sites, such to say. But we hope that you'll come along and join us. We look forward to seeing you soon. To quote one of the greatest business minds of our time, Charles Munger, he said, "The best thing a human can do is help another human being know more." Here on our Parking Industry Podcast, we want to provide knowledge and resources. If you heard something that sparked your curiosity in today's episode, please reach out on our socials at TPN Consulting. You can find us on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. Don't forget to subscribe and follow. See you next time on Our Parking Industry.